In the previous video, we discussed how Iran's influence on the world led to the current conflict, starting from the history of Persia becoming Iran, the power of Cyrus the Great, the influence of Persia on Islamic civilization, to the conflicts we have heard about recently. One of the countries in conflict with Iran is Israel. Here, we will reveal how Israel frequently violates the internationally agreed upon rules for world peace. The world knows it today as the epicenter of a never-ending conflict. However, did you know that the name Israel actually originated not as a country, but as a name given after a tremendous spiritual struggle? The country of Israel is often associated with Judaism. This history is related to three major religions, namely Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Today, we will dig into the deepest roots of history, the origins of Israel and how the Jewish people have reached the point they are today. Long before the modern world map was formed, and long before today's conflicts broke out on our television screens, this history began with one wanderer who carried great promise. Ibrahim, or Abraham, a man who left the splendor of Mesopotamia to follow a spiritual calling to the promised land, Canaan. Abraham had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. It is from Isaac that our story begins, and it was in this land that the seeds of Israel's history were planted. Through his son, Isaac, and his grandson, Jacob, a small family would transform into a nation that would shake world civilization. It all started with one figure, Jacob, the son of Isaac and grandson of Abraham. In historical records and scriptures, it is said that Jacob experienced a very deep spiritual event. Many say that he received the title of Israel, namely Isra, which means servant of Illinois, which is God. Jacob had 12 sons who became the forerunners of the large tribes, collectively called the Bani Israel, children of Israel or Jacob. Of the 12 sons of Jacob, there was one name that would become the forerunner of the Jewish nation from the Bani Israel. They were not originally a nation, not a country. They were a large family of nomadic goat herders. But it was from this family that the great history of human civilization would change. One of the 12 sons of Jacob, Yusuf, was sold by his older brothers to Egypt at the age of 17. At the age of 30, Yusuf was appointed Prime Minister of Egypt.
Great Pharaoh, the omens are clear. The harvest will fail. Speak plainly, emissary. What do the words upon that scroll dictate?
Then the food crisis hit the Middle East, including the land of Canaan, for 7 years. Jacob, the father of Joseph, along with his other sons, whom we call the Bani Israel, finally moved to Egypt. When the Bani Israel moved to Egypt, Joseph was around 39 to 40 years old. At first, they lived comfortably, but it didn't last long, until finally, around 400 years later, life changed. And the Pharaoh king also changed power. Finally, the Bani Israel were enslaved for hundreds of years. Their identity was destroyed. They were forced to build pyramids and ancient Egyptian buildings. They were tortured until their baby boys were killed, to the point where they lost hope. Until finally, a triggering moment changed the plot. Moses was raised in the palace of Pharaoh, and finally he realized where he came from. Moses was given a task from God to free the Israelites from slavery. The Israelites finally agreed to Moses' message and followed Moses to the place promised by God. In the middle of their journey, they were trapped in the Red Sea, while behind them Pharaoh and his army were chasing them. An incident occurred where Moses parted the sea. And gave them a way to escape from Pharaoh's pursuit.
The sea is closing. Abandon the chariots. We're sinking. Help us.
And finally Pharaoh and his army drowned in the Red Sea. The moment when Moses saved the Israelites from slavery in Egypt was not just an escape. This is where the Israelites were reborn from being just frightened slaves, until finally they were bound by a sacred covenant on Mount Sinai. Moses received revelation on Mount Sinai, namely the Torah. At this point, they were given a task, namely, to go to the land promised by God. But their journey was not easy. After Moses was rescued from Pharaoh's pursuit, there was one person among the Israelites who made a statue of a cow to worship. Because the Israelites often disobeyed their prophets, the Israelites were punished by God to wander in the desert for 40 years. Imagine a journey that was supposed to take just a few weeks, dragging on for 40 years just because they were too stubborn to change. In the end, the Israelites rose to their golden age under the leadership of two legendary figures, both kings and prophets, King David and King Solomon. King David defeated the giant Goliath and succeeded in uniting the 12 tribes of Israel and making Jerusalem the capital. Then King David handed over the baton of his kingdom to his son, King Solomon, to continue his kingdom. Then King Solomon built the Temple of Solomon. At that time, the Israelites became a wealthy and highly respected people under the leadership of King Solomon. There is a unique fact that you should know, which very few people know, and this is very important. You must often hear the words Bani Israel and Jews used interchangeably, as if they mean the same thing. In fact, they are different. Let me explain slowly. After King Solomon died, these 12 tribes were divided due to civil war. Even though they had reached the peak of their glory, they were fighting among themselves. This tribe was divided into two, one in the north and one in the south. In the north there were 10 tribes that formed the kingdom of Israel, and in the south there were 2 tribes, one of which was the Judah tribe that formed the kingdom of Judah. This kingdom in the north was attacked by the Asher tribe. This tribe was colonized, expelled, and finally assimilated with other nations. In the end, this tribe disappeared from history. This is what is often called the mystery of the 10 tribes of Israel. The remaining and loyal tribe of the descendants of David's line is only the tribe from the south, namely Judah. So Jews are descendants of Israel. But not all Jewish descendants are Israel. There are still 11 other descendants. It is from Judah that we are called Jews. Destruction struck again. The Babylonians razed Judah, and culminating in the Romans. Destruction of Jerusalem. In 70 AD, this began the Diaspora, 2,000 years of statelessness, spreading across Europe, Africa, and Asia. As a commercially savvy but exclusive minority, they were often the target of slander, hatred, and even exile in mainland Europe. The peak of this suffering occurred in the 1930s. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis viewed the Jewish race as parasites. In the mass genocide known as the Holocaust, 6 million people, 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population, were exterminated in gas chambers. The world witnessed the horrors of human beings being treated like property in concentration camps like Auschwitz. At this point, the Jewish people were truly on the verge of total extinction. But like a movie with a surprising ending, the Jews refused to die. In the early 20th century, long before the smoke from the concentration camps had settled, a movement began to grow, Zionism. A collective awareness that a people exiled for 2,000 years must return to their ancestral home, not as guests, but as masters in their own land. May 14, 1948. In a hall in Tel Aviv, beneath a portrait of Theodor Herzl, David Ben-Gurion read the Declaration of Independence. After 2 millennia of nomadic existence, the modern state of Israel was officially established. However, this return marked the beginning of a new tragedy for the Palestinian Arabs who had lived there for centuries, a conflict whose wounds still fester to this day. The history of the Bani Israel teaches us about the remarkable resilience of identity. However, it also leaves us with a big question. How can we coexist in a land with so many layers of historical narratives? Thank you for watching this video to the end. Don't forget to click like if you learned something new today. And be sure to subscribe to Book of History for more in-depth historical stories. What are your thoughts on this nation's long journey? Let's have a civil discussion in the comments below.